The folding tables had been set up since 7. By 8:30, 30 science projects lined the auditorium floor of the Crestwood Civic Center in 2 long rows, each one tagged with a yellow entry number and a category card. Doris Calloway had been a volunteer judge at the Crestwood Regional Science Exposition for 11 years, and she knew the rhythm of the morning the way she knew the periodic table, the hiss of the portable PA being tested, the smell of coffee from the volunteers' A-table near the fire door, the particular quiet of children, standing behind work they had spent months pairing and were now terrified someone would touch. She moved down the judge's row with her scoring sheet and her reading glasses and settled into usual chair at the center, third from the left. She noticed the coordinator before she noticed anything wrong. Gerald Pitt had run the regional fair for 6 years. He was the kind of administrator who treated a clipboard as an instrument of authority. He held chest high, consulted it before speaking, and never set it down. Doris had learned to read him the way you learn to read weather. When he moved with purpose toward a table, something bureaucratic was about to happen. This morning, he was moving with a great deal of purpose toward the far end of the second row, and his expression was the one that meant he had already decided something. The table he was heading toward belonged to a boy named Marcus Ellen Jr. Doris had noticed the project when she'd walked the floor before the doors opened to the public. A hand-built scale model of a single-stage solid-fuel rocket, roughly 2 feet tall, mounted on a display board beside a lab notebook that was, by any measure she could apply, extraordinary. The notebook ran to 41 pages. There were hand-drawn diagrams of the combustion chamber with annotated measurements, 3 pages of thrust calculations showing the work, a materials log itemizing every component with its source and cost, and a typed summary of the student's methodology that read like the work of someone who had spent real time with real physics. A letter, clipped to the inside cover, bore the letterhead of Crestwood Middle School Science Department and the signature of the department chair, attesting that Marcus Elland, grade 8, had completed this project independently under faculty supervision and met all requirements for regional submission. Project was entered in the physical sciences, engineering design category. Doris had looked at the entry criteria for that category. She had them memorized. This project met everyone. Marcus was 14. He was standing behind his table when Pitt arrived, wearing a pressed white shirt with a collar button done up, his lab notebook open in front of him to the methodology page. He had positioned himself slightly to the right of center, so that a visitor could see the full display board without leaning around him. Doris had been teaching physics for 31 years before she retired, and she had stood in front of enough classrooms and enough science fairs to know what careful preparation looked like. This was careful preparation. "Son," Pitt said, setting his clipboard on the edge of the table without being invited to, "I need to talk to you about your entry." The boy's eyes moved from Pitt's face to the clipboard and back. He didn't answer right away. When he spoke, his voice was even and quiet. "Yes, sir. Your project has been flagged for a category review. There's a question about whether the engineering design category is the appropriate placement for a model of this type." Pitt's eyes went to the rocket, then to the board, then to a point slightly above the boy's head. "I'm going to need you to hold off on setup while we look at the criteria." "I've completed setup," Marcus said. He touched the edge of the display board, a small, deliberate gesture, not aggressive, just clarifying. "I've been assigned table 14. My entry number is confirmed. I understand that, but if the category placement is incorrect, the entry may need to be withdrawn." The word withdrew from the room. Doris felt it go. She had been watching from the judge's row with her scoring sheet in her lap, and she set it down on the chair beside her. Marcus reached for the lab notebook. He opened it to the inside cover, moved the faculty sponsor's letter, and placed it on the table in front of Pitt. Then he opened to the first page of calculations and set the notebook beside it. Then he produced, from a folder she hadn't noticed beside the board, printed copy of the official Crestwood Regional Exposition Entry Guidelines with the physical sciences. Engineering design criteria highlighted in yellow. "Mr. Pitt," he said, "can you tell me which standard I haven't met?" Pitt looked at the letter. He looked at the guidelines. His clipboard, First time Doris could remember. Stayed at his side. That's what we're in the process of reviewing. I'd like to know the specific standard. His jaw moved. This isn't a debate, son. I'm the regional coordinator, and I'm telling you that there are questions about your entry's eligibility. And that, until those questions are resolved, you'll need to step back from the table. He said it gently. He said it with the particular gentleness of a man who believes that gentleness makes an unreasonable thing reasonable. Doris had heard that tone before, from different voices, in different rooms, and she knew exactly what it was covering. Marcus did not step back. He straightened slightly, his hands flat on the table on either side of the notebook, and he looked at Gerald Pitt with an expression that was not defiance and was not distress. It was patience. It was the particular patience of a person who is prepared for every question and is waiting for the right one to be asked. In the third row of the public seating, a woman sat very still. She was wearing a navy coat and holding a program folded in thirds. Doris had watched her watch her son with that same patience for the last 4 minutes, and it had cost her something. Doris could see it cost her something, but she had not moved because her son was handling it and she was going to let him. Doris stood up. She was about to say something. She had the entry criteria in her head, and she was prepared to recite them, all of them, from memory in this room, in front of however many people were watching, but she did not have to. At the back of the auditorium, a woman in a gray blazer rose from her seat. She had been there since 8 o'clock. Doris had noticed her when she arrived. A composed woman, mid-50s, seated alone in the last row with a pad folio open across her knees. Watching the floor set up with the particular attentiveness of someone who is there to see something specific. The lanyard around her neck had a badge on it that Doris hadn't read. She read it now. Dr. Yvonne Marsh, Chief Science Education Officer, Crestwood State Board of Education, Regional Program Review. The auditorium was quiet in the way that a room goes quiet when it realizes something important is about to happen. Dr. Marsh walked the length of the floor at an unhurried pace and stopped at table 14. She looked at the rocket. She looked at the display board. She picked up the lab notebook and turned to the methodology page, read for a moment, and set it down. Then she looked at Gerald Pitt. Mr. Pitt. Her voice was conversational. I've been conducting an unannounced review of the regional program this morning. I'd like your help with something. She opened her pad folio and produced a laminated card. The official entry guidelines for the Crestwood Regional Science Exposition, the current year's edition. She set it on the table between them. Would you read aloud the disqualification criteria for the physical sciences, engineering design category? The room held its breath. Pitt looked at the card. He looked at it for a long time. Mr. Pitt, the criteria, he said, speak to there are questions of scope. The criteria are printed on this card, Dr. Marsh said. Please read them. He read them. His voice, by the fourth line, had gone flat and small. The criteria required a hypothesis, a methodology, documented testing, a materials log, and a faculty sponsor letter. They said nothing about the nature of the physical system being studied. They said nothing about rockets. They said nothing that disqualified Table 14. When he finished reading, Dr. Marsh thanked him and turned to Marcus. You walk me through your project. Marcus Ellen Jr. walked her through it. He started with the hypothesis that a hand-built, single-stage model could demonstrate measurable thrust variation through changes in combustion chamber geometry, and he walked through the design process, the materials sourcing, the 3 test firings he had conducted with his faculty sponsor present, the data he had recorded, and the conclusions he had drawn. He spoke for 7 minutes without notes. He pointed to the diagrams, to the calculation pages, to the test data table. He answered every question Dr. Marsh asked with the precision of someone who had learned the work so well that the words for it came without effort. The public seats were full by then. Parents and younger siblings who had come to see other projects had drifted to the far end of the second row, and they stood at a respectful distance and watched a boy explain his rocket science to the State Board of Education. When he finished, Dr. Marsh made 3 notes in her pad folio. Your entry is confirmed valid for the physical sciences. Engineering design category, she said. You'll present to the judges at 10 o'clock as scheduled. She looked at the judges' row. The panel should be prepared. Doris sat back down. She picked up her scoring sheet. Her hands, she noticed, were not quite steady. Gerald Pitt left the floor. He stood near the fire door for a while, and then he went outside. Doris did not see him again that morning. The formal notice came the following week. The State Board had opened a review of regional fair entry procedures, with particular attention to the coordinator's application of disqualification authority. Pending the outcome of that review, Pitt was removed from the regional coordinator role. The notice used careful language. Administrative reassignment pending review findings, but the effect was plain. Marcus Ellen Jr. presented his project at 10 o'clock to a panel of 5 judges, one of whom was Doris Calloway. He scored a 94 out of 100. Project advanced to the state competition. His mother, in the third row, pressed the program she'd been holding in thirds to the center of her chest and closed her eyes for a moment, and then opened them again and watched her son shake hands with each judge in turn. Driving home that afternoon through the long flat light of a Saturday in early spring, Doris thought about the 41 pages in that notebook. She thought about the 3 test firings, conducted with a faculty sponsor present, recorded in a hand that had measured everything twice. She thought about a boy who had prepared every possible answer and then stood at a table with his hands flat and quiet and waited for the right question to finally be asked. She had judged 11 years of fairs. She had seen a great many projects, some of them brilliant, most of them earnest, a few of them neither. She had never seen a child stand with that kind of patience in the face of that kind of doubt. She hoped he went a long way. She thought, at what she had watched that morning, that he probably would.